Hey, 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 everybody. It is Thursday, and we all know what that means, baby. That's right. It's another edition of the Real Deal Pod with Allister and Geoff. It is episode 87. It is sunny outside, but super cold. What are we at? Minus 40? My goodness, it feels like I'm living back in Winnipeg all over again. It is freezing out there, but it is beautiful. It is sunny. We are bringing the heat today. Geoff, buddy, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm trying to find my weather app and seeing how cold it is because it's sure nice outside, but it's brisk, I think. So I'm gonna not go with your minus 40 because that is Alberta or Manitoba weather, which I'm gonna share a little story and then I'm gonna get into your and see how your week has been. But I remember I went to Cuba one year,
Right?
and Cuba is super hot.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are flying back from Cuba, going into Winnipeg, minus 40 with
That's
the
about
wind chill.
right.
And I'm like, oh my Lord, I am glad I do not live here. Or I actually said, I'm just glad I'm inside the plane, right? Minus 40 coming
Yeah,
back
man.
from Cuba.
That's a sunny winter day in Winnipeg. That's a beautiful Winterpeg day.
Wow.
I
Yeah.
remember. You see how tough we got to be. We used to have to go and play outside at recess. They didn't keep us inside. In this day and age now, if it gets to a certain temperature, they keep you inside. I
They close,
swear.
they don't keep you inside. They just shut they just it's not a school day.
Yeah, I swear, buddy, it'd be minus 50. I may be exaggerating, probably minus 45, but they'd still put us outside to play. Then again, we're 80s babies, so they didn't really put too much care and consideration into 80s babies. It was just get outside.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Crazy.
man.
How was your week?
It's good. It's good. It's been pretty busy. Been pretty busy. Got a busy weekend already lined up, but it's been good. It's been good. I've got some interesting information to kind of tie on to the Did You Know from last week. That's going to be a Did You Know this week. So I'm excited to talk about that. But yeah, no, it's been good. The kids are alive. They're doing well in school. That's really all I go. If those two things are going well, then I'm pretty good.
There you go.
Yeah,
There you go.
right. Keep the bar low. Bar
Let's get
low.
at it. Let's
All
get
right,
at it.
man. Well, let's kick it and get into the hottest segment in podcast right now, and that is
Did you know?
that's right, baby. Did you know? So, Geoff, last week we went a little bit political, I remember, and we talked about what is currently what you should be looking for when you're voting for your provincial representation. And I was reading an article, what 2 days ago, um, that announced that our government has just released our forecasted budget, and things might not be looking too rosy, Geoff.
Mm.
Things might not be looking too rosy. So, did you know, Geoff, the latest BC provincial budget could actually make housing more expensive to build, even while the government says affordability remains a top priority?
All right, one more time.
All right, sorry, I know my phone just rang. So, did you know the latest BC provincial budget could actually make housing more expensive to build, even while the government says affordability remains a top priority?
All right. This is going to be a good
All
one.
right. Yeah, let me tell you about this. So, this week, the province introduced a budget projecting a record deficit expected to grow from about 9.6 billion this year to 13.3 billion next year, alongside tax increases and reductions within the public sector. And that by reductions, I mean job reductions in the public sector. So just to stop and pause for a second, we are looking at a $4 billion increase to our deficit, our record deficit next year. So this is what I meant when I talked about NDP governments, right? Now, deficits, just to be balanced, deficits during uncertain economic times aren't unusual. Governments do tend to spend more when the economy is down. But what matters is how governments choose to raise revenue. And right now, many housing experts are concerned that some of these decisions could unintentionally push housing costs higher. So here's why. One of the biggest changes is the expansion of the provincial sales tax to professional services like accounting, architecture, engineering, and consulting. That might sound technical, but these services are essential at the very beginning of every housing project. So before construction even starts, developers must pay for design, engineering reports, planning, and legal work. Adding PST to those services increases upfront development costs, and those costs don't disappear. They typically show up later as a higher home price or projects that simply just don't get built. Industry examples suggest even small multi-unit developments could see thousands of dollars added per home before construction begins. And because GST is applied at the point of sale, buyers can end up paying tax on top of tax. The budget also increases taxes tied to housing and land ownership, including higher speculation and vacancy taxes and increased school taxes on higher value properties. So now we're going to be looking at taxing people higher for wanting to send our children to better schools. Economists warn these measures raise holding costs for development land, which can delay or cancel future projects. And that's important because housing supply works on long timelines. If projects don't make financial sense today, fewer homes get built. And the real impact shows up years later, like I was saying last week, as tighter supply and upward pressure on prices. To be clear, governments are dealing with real economic uncertainty right now, but housing policy requires alignment. You generally can't lower housing costs while simultaneously increasing the cost of building homes. That's why many industry professionals are watching the budget closely. The concern isn't just about taxes, it's about long-term consequences for supply. Because housing affordability isn't shaped overnight, it's shaped by the projects that start or don't start today. So while this may sound like a government finance story, it's really a housing story. And the effects will likely appear gradually through slower construction, reduced supply, and continued pressure on prices in the years ahead. And that's your Did You Know? Because understanding policy today helps explain where the housing market may be heading tomorrow.
Well,
what are your thoughts, Jeff?
now I'm in a bad mood.
No way more NDP, Jeff. We can't handle the deficits. $4 billion, man.
Well, I think there was a poll that if there was an election called today, NDP still holds a very, very strong position
They'd win
here in British Columbia. So
they'd win. And as I said, and I've said it pod upon pod, that I've moved to an independent, right? Provincially, I hadn't moved to an independent as of yet. And one of the things that the Conservatives were really drugged down by was the former leader that we had running here provincially. He did his theology, his philosophy wasn't in line really with the majority of the people that live in our beautiful province. So it really caused us to take a back seat. So from a Conservative standpoint, there's no chance. There's no chance. And from a Liberal standpoint, those feelings with Trudeau right? Even though he's no longer the leader of the Liberal Party, they still all exist. So it's one of those things where, well, we'll trust the guy that we've already got. We'll trust the guy that nobody has any harsh words to, because we haven't, again, I haven't heard a lot about these budget things come up. And that's a lot of stuff, again, as I said last week, that we need to pay attention to. We don't really need to I mean, we should keep ourselves informed of Canada as a whole, right? And understanding what our budget looks like for Canada as a whole. But that budget doesn't affect us as much as the one that happens within our province. And so to not hear much about that should really alarm us, because it means that we don't know how our province is doing, which direction our province is going. And going from $9.6 billion in deficit to $13.3 billion in deficit, that's not a good way to be going.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, when we have this big thing that's shouted out across Canada that we're building homes, build Canada, and all of that sort of great stuff, all these great taglines that are supposed to get us excited about the way that our country's moving. Well, when we have within our own province, a government that's going to make that even harder to do, to make it less affordable for us to own homes, right? Flies in the face of what we're supposed to be cheering about. And then we get lost by blaming it on a federal basis, when really that's not the case. The damage is being done here at home by the elected leaders that we've put in place here.
Yeah.
And I think that we just need to, again, I keep saying we need to pay a whole lot more attention. And again, this isn't my mandate, and it's not my mission to crush the NDP. If the NDP was doing well, I'd love to speak about it. I mean, like I said, I moved from a conservative federally to an independent because I thought that Carney was a better leader for our country, right? So it's got nothing to do with political allegiance. It's literally got to do with who's going to be doing the best job for us as Canadians. And now it's who's going to be doing the best job for us as British Columbians. And we really now have to start evaluating what that looks like, because we're already in a position where we've got a slow market. And so if we're continuing to put to put obstacles in front of us from bringing that down, what happens to the net worth of our people? And thinking also long term, this is what causes our youth to leave. Right? Well, if the best of our youth are leaving our province to go find opportunities elsewhere, again, what does that leave us with? What does our future look like?
Well, like I said, now I'm in a bad mood.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. It's crazy. You know what? My did you know was gonna be about TELUS. So just quickly, do you know what TELUS is doing now with some of their old sites? They're building for rental properties. So it now looks like companies like TELUS and Rogers and Bell will start getting into development as well. So not only are developers going to have their own the competition of themselves to deal with, but they're actually going to have potential telecom companies developing their old for rental spots. Because what used to happen was when developments were built, you ran all the lines up top, right? So everything was built from a central spot. Now that things have been moved underground, that central spot isn't needed anymore. So TELUS and that are now repurposing those into for rental properties. I think they've got 8 already looking to get started. 8 of them. Yeah. Yeah.
So rental purpose buildings from Shaw and TELUS.
Yeah, this is from TELUS. Like this one, that's TELUS is the one that's getting into it like right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that would be a good did you know for next week.
Yeah, I'll bring that up. I'll look more into it. Awesome. Well, that's my did you know, buddy.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the 5-year rule in real estate.
Okay.
And as you know, most people are going to tell you to hold your property for a minimum of 5 to 10 years. And in doing so, what typically is going to happen to the value of your home?
Well, normally you're going to see a great gain of equity throughout those years.
Right. And we just did a blog on this, so I wanted to kind of explain what is the new 5-year rule as of 2026,
Okay.
because that opinion may have changed a little bit. And when we were doing this blog, there are some things that I was like, you know what, this is interesting. It may go against the grain of some people's opinions, but it does have a lot of valuable information in it. So here's where we go is the 5-year rule is based on buying and selling in real estate. And but we also have to understand what the significant costs included are in buying and selling. So there's your realtor commissions.
Yeah.
What is the average realtor commission nowadays, Alistair?
Well, if you're selling, if you're a buyer, you know that doesn't come out of your pocket,
Right.
right?
You're
If
selling.
you're a seller, um, as agents, we all have our own
Fee structure.
fee structure that we use. We don't say it out loud because it's
Okay.
you know it's a
Gotcha.
private thing. No. That's okay. And in fact, it's funny that you mentioned because I don't want to take it too far off the rails, but there is actually a lawsuit that happened in the States, and there's one I don't know if it's over yet that happened in Toronto, that had to do with realtor fees because when you look at buying, right, when you look at that buyer fee, right, that the buyer's agent usually gets. It's usually about 3% to 3.2 on the first 100,000 and 1.15 on the balance. Now, what's happened is that if but it's been become such a prevalent number that it's almost being taken as collusion, as price setting, price fixing by realtors, and it's now pushing the flat fee realtors to not having their property shown because a flat fee realtor is usually offering $3,000 to the buyer, to the buyer's agent. Well, if you're a buyer's agent and you know that one property is going to pay you $3,000, the other one's going to pay you 3.22 and 1.15 on the balance, which normally just for
Alistair, you said
past
you're not going to take this off the
I was
rails.
going to say, no, it usually works out to 8,000, right? $8,000. Which one are you going to show, Jeff?
Yeah.
The property that pays you three or the one that pays you eight?
Yeah.
So, but the normal fee for selling your house, when you first sit down to talk to your agent, to an agent, normally seven on the first 100,000, 3.5 on the balance. Sometimes some of them do three on the balance.
And those listeners that are out east, typically it is a flat fee on the whole
And
amount.
so that's and yeah, and it's not just out east. It's literally from Alberta on. We are the
Okay.
only province that does that. Normally, after that, it's 5 to 6% on the entire amount.
So to reel this all back in to where we started,
Yeah.
there are costs to sell your home and there are costs to purchase your home. And some of those costs that we have to keep in mind is there's your realtor commissions. And let's just say, hey, that's different amongst the provinces that we're in.
Yeah.
There's your legal costs and your closing costs. Here in British Columbia, we have property transfer tax, right?
Yeah.
You have your moving expenses. And if you're in a mortgage, you might have some mortgage penalty if you're breaking that mortgage and it's unable to port. But these costs can accumulate up to 8% of the value of your home. So if you sell too quickly, you may not have built enough equity to offset those expenses in today's market. So if you bought that home back in, say, 5 years ago, which is 2021, right,
COVID.
where you bought it at a high kind of pricing, and now we're in 2026, and we've talked about this before, where your property is not appreciating as quickly as it once was. you might actually not be coming out ahead when you're selling your home within the first 5 years. Unlike, say, 10 years ago, when you would buy a home in 2015, say, or even 2016, and now you're selling it in 2021, you know, there would be a very strong argument to say, hey, buy and sell, buy and sell, and buy and sell.
Yeah.
If you have bought your home in the last 5 years, it may not have been a great strategy to do, right? So moving forward, what we're saying is that buying and selling within a 5 year time frame, and who knows what our next 5 years are going to look like, it may not be a strategy that works for most anymore, right? So it goes back to what we were saying, is going back to that rental purpose building, and people now really leaning on the idea as far as, hey, it's going to be better for me to rent than it is going for me to buy. So we'll let you get into that one.
So that was just going to be my question though. Do you think that that's driven because of the how the condo market was, right? And the buying and selling within the 5 years was driven mostly because of condo investment, right? And now all the changes that have occurred,
Yeah.
condo investment just isn't lucrative anymore. Again, another article I was reading, and I equate it to Vancouver as well, but they were talking about Toronto's market, condo market, that essentially it was like a Ponzi scheme.
Mm.
It was literally built that it was going to collapse at some point, right? That the scheme was going to collapse at some point. And, tongue in cheek, is that really like Vancouver too? It was just bound to collapse at some point,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Well, and even to add to your point, like, why did the 5 year rule make sense in the past is, we had great immigration growth, right?
Sure.
We didn't handcuff investors.
Yeah.
There was no foreign buyers tax. There was no short
Restrictions.
term. There was no short term rental restrictions.
Yeah.
There was I don't know when the vacancy tax came into, but you take a look at the last 5 years, what our provincial and federal government has done in regards to creating more affordability, um, really has handcuffed a lot of people. And even to your point, even with our provincial announcement, is really handcuffing people to get into the market, right? But as soon as they get into the market, there's been slower home growth, right? So again, enables people to sell homes within that 5 year period. There's longer mortgage terms, meaning that our rates have been a little bit on. Again, I'm talking about our last 5 years.
Yeah.
When you take a look at our rates back in 2021 to where our rates are now, and you also take a look at our cost of living, right? As far as where our cost of living has gone in the last 5 years. So the rules or that cycle has changed from, even if we want to compare it from 2016 to 2021 versus 2021 to 2026. And yes, hindsight, Alistair, is always 2020, right?
Hmm.
But what is our next 5 years going to look like? We've talked about this in the past. In the last 2 years, Canada has seen no population growth,
Yep.
right? We take a look at Vancouver and we take a look at Toronto. They're in a decline as far as housing sales go with the supply and the demand,
Yep.
right? We take a look at even this most recent announcement where it may be tougher to buy here in British Columbia because of an additional $4 billion of deficit coming in.
Right.
So then you kind of go back to what people are saying, well, what are our next 5 years going to look like, right? We've talked about this before, is that a lot of people will agree that 2026 may be a tough year for real estate sales, right? They're saying it's going to be very, very similar to 2025. They then feel that 2027 is going to start to get that snowball going because, again, the reason 2026 is a little bit softer is because we have so much supply and we have not as much demand. But as we continue to move forward, that supply is going to diminish slowly by slowly by slowly because people are still buying. They're just not buying in droves,
Right.
right? And as we lose that supply, that demand's going to increase. And then all of a sudden, some say that in 2028, we're going to see a rebound in the real estate market here in Vancouver and Toronto, right?
Mhm.
So again, that 5-year rule may apply here from 2026 to 2031. But again, there's people kind of they live in increments. They
Yeah.
remember the last 5 years. And that's kind of how they kind of move forward in their next 5 years, right? And we
Yeah.
see that even in pre-COVID, and we're seeing this post-COVID, and we're seeing that. Why is there another reason why our market is slow is because everybody has PTSD from the last 5 years, and no one is really moving forward in buying like they once were because
Sure.
everything that we hear is negative, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So again, and we're touching on all of this is why is that 5-year rule changing is again, we're looking at interest rates, right?
Yep.
We're taking a look at people's careers and their lifestyle. I believe that every 3 years, people are changing their jobs in some way, shape, or form. Not like in our old days, like I was at my first job for 26 years,
Yeah.
right? My
Yeah.
second career, which is brokering for 15 plus years. But everybody is now changing their jobs every 3 years. Everyone seems to be looking for more opportunity. There's more um, more acceleration going towards business for self, starting your own business. People are growing their families, and the reality of it is there's lots of separation. So there's a lot of kind of speed bumps why people are challenging that 5-year rule, right? But I also think, Alistair, the 5-year rule does make sense, and it still makes sense. And when we were writing this blog, I had a tough time kind of arguing for the 5-year rule in today's environment because I'm a huge believer in, in properties being purchased. I'm a huge believer that your house is your biggest piggy bank. I'm a huge believer in real estate cycles and how they correct over periods of time, right?
Yeah.
So the argument again to those who say, hey, the 5-year rule doesn't make sense, the 5-year rule still makes sense if you are stable in what you do and you're predictable in what you do, right? For me, I've lived in one house for 23 years. I've had one job for 26 years. So if I was to go and buy a home, my history tells me that I'm very predictable as far as
Sure.
how long I'm going to keep that home.
Yeah.
So again, if you're planning um, long-term career in the same industry or within the same company or within the same kind of region, if you're really ingrained for stability, right? And you're really ingrained that once you kind of settle in, you don't change. And there's many of us that aren't. That is when that 5-year rule makes sense, right? I think we've talked about it in our own pod, is that if you hold on to a home for 10 years, say you bought it for 500,000, that home, if you take a look at compound interest, should be worth about $1 million 10 years from today,
Sure. Yeah.
right? So again, we're in a volatile market. We are hearing more people saying they want to rent versus what they want to buy. Um, and again, I guess it depends on which sandbox that you're playing in. Are you playing in that sandbox whereas like, you know what? Rates are on the high. The market is correcting. There's been no appreciation in real estate for a period of time. There's no population growth. Yes, provincial and federally governments are trying to make it more affordable housing, but if you take a look at really, let's take a look since they've implemented those rules and those regulations and guidelines. I don't think housing has moved to become very affordable, right? Like I think our rental rates are as high as they ever been, right?
Yep.
So nobody is well, I shouldn't say nobody, but Kelowna has a rental vacancy of 6%. right? You take a look at what their home sales are, probably down, I don't know, Alistair, this is your sandbox.
I'm gonna guess Kelowna is down very much the same as everybody else, about 30%.
Right. So again, how have these rules and regulations initiated home buying and affordability? In fact, it almost looks like it's reversed it,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
So again, I always encourage people, take a look at the blog, check it out. I'm really interested to see what people's opinions are on that 5-year plan, right? I still believe the 5-year plan is really a 10-year plan because I believe that if you can hold on to any type of anything for 10 years, it's going to appreciate in value.
Yeah.
You take a look at even our last 5 years, some people will say we're in an economic recession, right? But any recession you take a look at, it usually will rebound within 6 to 8 years from its onset.
Yeah.
I think Alberta is probably an exception to that. But again, I'm a big believer on having that 5-year plan in place. I'm a big believer in purchasing. I believe it's a great time to purchase now in the environment that we're in. And I'm not a huge advocate to say, hey, the 5-year plan isn't what it used to be, and maybe now is not the best time to buy. But Alistair, I'm curious on your opinion on this.
No, I so the couple things come to mind with the 5-year plan. I I got introduced to the 5-year plan when I first moved here, right? And it was coincidentally from the realtor that was helping me buy my place. And it made sense to me, right? Why people own their property for 5 years or for about 5 years was because the first thing that they moved into, the first purchase they make is a condo, is an apartment.
Yeah.
They live in there, like they get married, live in there, and then they have a child, right? And now it's like, okay, we have a child. Oh, and now we have another one coming on the way. We've been in our condo for 5 years. It doesn't fit our needs anymore. Now we need a townhome, right? Now they buy a townhome. Well, 5 years from there, maybe they're not having another baby, but the children have grown. So they need bigger space. Or maybe they are having another child. Now they definitely need a bigger space. And they go and buy their home. And then they probably sit in that home for about 15 years or so, right? But it's that first initial stages, that's why they bought every 5 years. Now, with our just going back to the fact that we are having less children, so our birth rate now is just short of Japan's, which has the lowest birth rate in the world. Ours is just short of theirs. We have not just a stagnant immigration where we don't have people moving. We actually are losing people. We're projected to lose 13,000 people out of BC, I believe, this year, which is a lot of people, right? We're 13,100 people or so. We're
And maybe
so,
more, maybe
and
more now.
and it may be more, right? So we're faced with losing people. So and now with the purpose-built rentals coming now, I believe that more people now are going to rent that condo, have a child, right? And now buy that townhouse as opposed to buying a condo, buying a townhouse, buying a house. So now that townhouse, in order to save up, they're going to have to rent longer. Then they're going to have to stay in that townhouse and save up longer to be able to buy that single family home. So what I feel like is that we're just transitioning into what other provinces throughout Canada, their real estate cycles really look like, where you buy a home, like a Winnipeg, for example, right? You save up, you buy a house, and most people live in that house for a good 10 to 15 years before they move into their second one, and they probably only own two homes in their entire lifetime, right? And I believe that that's almost where we're moving into now. We're just not, I don't want to say crashing, but it's not really soft landing to the spot where all the other provinces are. It's a drastic change to the psyche of a British Columbian, I think. That's really what I think it is. I think We're getting into what a new normal is going to look like. And when it comes to 2028, I truly believe, yes, we are going to see way more activity. We're going to see way less inventory than we have. We're going to see our condos increase, the price of condos increase, because again, a lot of this stuff has to do with our influences from the media and the stuff that's going on in the United States. I am a firm believer that if tomorrow there was a different leader in the United States, that our economy, our behaviors would change on a dime. I'm a 100% believer in that. I believe that we put too much stock into what goes on in the United States. I understand that what the United States is doing has a mass impact on us. In fact, I was reading another article, and I wish the United States people in the US would read these articles, right? There was so far they were looking at what we as the public, were looking at from purchases. We have paid 90% of the tariffs. So the companies that have received the tariff, they've paid 10% of that. We've paid 90 as a consumer. Yeah. That's what's been passed on to us.
Yeah.
So if you were to remove the tariffs, our cost of living changes drastically. And again, that opens up our wallets and that opens up our ability to be in real estate again. So just my thoughts.
That's a good way to end it, my man.
Beautiful. Well, thank you all for sitting and listening to this today. I know it got a little bit political, not as much in terms of, how to get a mortgage or what to do with that mortgage or what it looks like to buy a house or how to sell your home. But these are things that we truly believe are things that people need to start looking at and listening to, because this is the stuff that's going to help them going into what's coming up to be the busiest market of the year for real estate and for mortgages, which is springtime. I think it's one of your busiest parts, is it? I've never asked you. Is it spring? Same as us? Right? So these parts we're heading into that time. You're going to be looking to buy. You're going to be looking to sell. You're going to be looking to make a move. So you need to have all your ducks in a row, and you need to have all of those trusted people in your group all aligned for you to be successful. So we hope that this has been educational for you guys. We hope that you were able to take a nugget away from this. We can't wait to see you guys next week for episode 88. In the meantime, tell your friends, tell everybody you know to love, like us, share us, tell your neighbors, tell your people at work, tell a stranger, for crying out loud. Everybody needs to know what's going on in real estate and the mortgage industry in British Columbia. And with that being said, stay empowered, stay informed, and Jeff, my man,
stay tuned.
That's right, baby. Stay tuned. Peace out.